My name is Caleb Lawson. I'm 35, a mechanic by trade and sarcastic by survival. I spend my days covered in grease making broken things behave. Machines make sense, people don't, but it took me a long time to admit that, especially about my wife, Marissa. The first crack wasn't loud. It was a smell. She came home just before 1 in the morning, heels snapping on tile, wrapped in a cloud of Chanel that had never lived in our house. She dug through the fridge like it owed her apologies. "Late night," she said, as if the perfume didn't answer for her. When I asked which teammate had kept her so busy, she said, "Mike, too fast," with that tight smile you learn from corporate trainings and small lies. I didn't fight. Some silences are more honest than arguments. She went to bed. I stood in the kitchen staring at a half-eaten yogurt and realizing she never finished anything anymore. Meals, promises, conversations. The next morning there was a sticky note, a rushed, meeting early, don't wait up, love you, the kind of love you staple onto a broken chair and call it stable. I tossed it. If denial were a sport, I could have gone pro. But even pros have breaking points, and mine came with a whiteboard. I slapped it onto the kitchen wall and made 2 columns, red for her schedule, blue for mine. Red for chaos, blue for calm. It wasn't a scoreboard, it was weather. Dress for the storm you make. She laughed when she saw it. "What is this, middle school?" I kept writing. Monday, late, no call. Tuesday, team dinner, home 11:50. Wednesday, don't wait up. Thursday, bedroom door closed, laughing on a call. By Friday, the board looked like a crime scene drawn in marker. Even the guys at the shop noticed. "You good, boss?" my apprentice asked. I told him I was fine and tuned a Camry's brakes until they sang like truth. With machines, when something's wrong, they make a noise. People smile while they leak oil. Marissa invited me to brunch with her co-workers. Optics, not intimacy. That's where I met David, the ride-home guy who wore cologne-like personality and called my wife Mayor. Nicknames are trespasses. He talked to me like he'd already counted me out. I let it pass. I was still pretending the storm would move. It didn't. Her late nights stretched like bad handwriting. She started locking her phone the way a spy would in a cheap movie. When I tried to talk, she said I was controlling, a word she'd found online that wrapped her in moral bubble wrap. I upgraded the whiteboard. Yellow sticky notes for missed calls, green for unfamiliar perfume, pink for the kind of text tone that makes a woman sound 19 again. It turned into a rainbow of dysfunction. One night she brought the team to our house to finish a presentation. Jessica cheerful, Todd nervous, and David, sleeves rolled, smirk loaded. He thanked me for letting them invade my place. I told him I'd think about it, given I paid the electric bill that powered his brainstorms. When he joked about jealousy, I told him I was only jealous of how efficiently he wasted oxygen. The room went refrigerator quiet. Marissa stared like I'd embarrassed her in front of the board of directors. I hadn't. She'd done that on her own. We performed the dying marriage dance for a few more weeks. She cleaned when she felt guilty. She burned expensive candles that sounded like apologies. I cooked dinner for one. When she called me childish, I told her pettiness was cheaper than being cheated on. Eventually, she drew a giant red X across the whiteboard and shouted, "There! Now it's over!" I stared at the ink running like mascara and said quietly, "Yeah, guess it is." That's when I stopped arguing and started confirming. I met Detective Alvarez in an office that smelled like stale coffee and endings. He asked if I wanted surveillance or drama. I picked surveillance. Drama was already a team sport in my house. 3 days later, I sat in his office as he slid photos across the desk with the care of a surgeon. Marissa and David at dinner, his hand on hers. Outside a hotel, their shoulders grazing, bodies too familiar. In an elevator, her mouth at his neck, his hand at the small of her back. I didn't rage. I didn't break things. I just breathed out like a man who'd finally heard the noise the engine had been making all along. I went home, made copies, and started packing like I was exercising a house. Clothes folded, shoes paired, cosmetics boxed and labeled. The diamond necklace I'd bought for our 5th anniversary went into a carton called Gifts from the Gullible. I stacked everything by the door, 6 boxes for 6 years, and put an envelope on top, photos, a clean set of divorce papers, and a note. Nothing poetic. "Since you've been living a double life, I figured I'd help you consolidate." At noon, she texted, "Working through lunch. Don't wait up." I typed back, "Is David that good?" 10 minutes later, tires crunched in the drive, the door burst open, and she stood staring at her life condensed into cardboard. "You hired someone to follow me," she said. "No," I said. "I hired someone to save me from thinking I was crazy." She called me cruel. I told her cruelty would have been letting this circus run another year. She opened the envelope. The elevator photo took her knees. Tears came, the kind that arrive right after consequences. "I can explain," she said. "Of course you can," I told her. "You've always been good at storytelling, just not truth-telling." She asked where she was supposed to go. I told her to ask David. I opened the door and stepped aside. She rolled a suitcase over the threshold and promised I'd regret it. I told her if I did, at least I'd regret it from a clean bed. The wheels rattled down the porch. The house exhaled. Divorce isn't fireworks. It's paperwork and coffee. We met at a roadside cafe called Grounded because the universe loves a caption. She came in dressed like a meeting, eyes trying to be brave. We kept it civil. She slid-tabbed, highlighted pages across the table. I signed. "You really hate me," she said. "No," I told her. "Hate takes energy. You're just noise I learned to tune out." She pushed an envelope toward me, a letter I didn't open. "You don't even want counseling?" she asked. I laughed once. "I did counseling every time I asked you to come home for dinner and every time I chose to believe you. I was the only one in therapy. You just never showed. When it was done, I paid for both coffees because irony deserved a last bow." At the door, she asked if I was seeing someone. I told her about a woman at the gym who'd said maybe 10 words to me and didn't lie with any of them. "Next time," I said, "try not to make love a group project." I rebuilt my mornings. Coffee, porch, sunlight over the neighbor's oaks. The house smelled like citrus and engine cleaner instead of regret. My sister dropped by, eyed the clean counters, and said I looked like a widower who actually got the insurance payout. She asked about Marissa. I told her the truth. I didn't know and didn't plan to. In the garage, an old motorcycle I'd abandoned years ago looked like a mirror, half-assembled, promising. I stripped, cleaned, replaced. Machines don't lie. If they hurt, they make noise. When that rebuilt engine finally thumped to life, it sounded like a heart restarting. Karma clocked in too. A local business blog ran a piece. Internal investigation, expense fraud, terminations at the marketing firm. David's name floated between the lines, and so did Marissa's, even if they didn't print it. My phone buzzed at 11:17 p.m., Guilt's favorite time zone. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "You didn't deserve what I did." I told her the universe had already handled the refund. She didn't write back. At Ray's bar, the dive where the neon hums louder than the customers, he slid a beer across the counter and said, "I looked lighter." I told him peace is cheaper than anger. He said sometimes the porch light isn't for guiding people home. It's so you can watch them leave without tripping. Weeks turned to months. I expanded the shop, got a little write-up in a local magazine for restoring a '69 Mustang. Precision and patience, the journalist called it. That's all healing is. Precision and patience applied to yourself. One afternoon, a text popped up. "Hey, it's Lauren from the gym. You still owe me a coffee." I didn't owe her anything, really. It was just a joke from a morning we reached for the same cup at the cafe. But I said yes. We met. She wore a plain white sweater and no agenda. We talked about nothing and everything, music, bad landlords, how she once tried to fix a flat with a butter knife. She laughed at herself instead of at me. When we finished, she asked if I wanted to walk. We did. No performance. No silence you had to decode. Just two people breathing the same air. I still pass places that used to be ours. The diner booth where we pretended pancakes could fix honesty. The street where her perfume lingered in cold air. They're just coordinates now. No ghosts, no echoes. If I look at my reflection in a dark window, he doesn't flinch anymore. He nods and moves on. People think closure comes from watching the other person fall. It doesn't. It comes when their fall stops mattering. Karma did what karma does. I handled me. If there's a lesson, it's this. When someone turns you into background noise, don't shout to be heard. Change the channel quietly, permanently without apology. Replace parts. Tighten bolts. Learn the sound of your own peace. One night, months after the papers, I rolled the bike out and let the engine warm. The street was empty. The porch light glowed. I remembered the last thing she ever said at my door. You'll regret this. I smiled into the dark. Regret had been my roommate for too long. I'd kicked it out with the rest. I killed the light, pulled on my helmet, and kicked into gear. The engine answered like an oath. Out on the highway, the wind washed everything clean. Perfume, lies, the taste of old arguments. For the first time in years, I wasn't running away from anything. I was just going. My name is Caleb Lawson. I fix broken things. Some you can save. Some you strip for parts and build something better from what's left. I used to think love was keeping a dead engine on life support. Now I know better. Peace isn't loud. It hums, like a well-tuned motor, like a house that finally stopped holding its breath, like a man who found the off switch to a storm and never turned it back on. Thanks for watching PLs, like and subscribe.